had my brother, 4 years old. He was fighting, had the respect, his own car, his own apartment, money always. So I kind of followed in his footsteps. Now, basically, I just kept on full focus. Everything I knew, every little button I could twist towards victory, I would do. And I was just in focus mode for the last 30 years. That's it. So, and then in the beginning, you're learning stuff in the sport. Later, I was looking outside of the sport. And that's also where all the longevity stuff came from. So, but what was your question again?
Just the way you would...
There was a time when the fight world murmured his name with dread. Alistair Overeem wasn't just another heavyweight, he was a beast. Towering, ripped, and lethal. His knees shattered ribs, his fists folded men like lawn chairs. Overeem wasn't just a fighter, he became a symbol of what was next in combat sports. K-1 Grand Prix Champion. Strikeforce King, dream heavyweight title holder, a force of nature and pride. A headline grabber in the UFC, but dominance doesn't last forever. Behind that shredded frame and all those thunderous knockouts came whispers, collapses, and bans. The same crowd that once screamed his name, they laughed when he fell. Now, at 44, Overeem lives in the shadows. His fighting days faded out quietly. That body, the one that once looked engineered in a lab, is long gone, and the name that once echoed power now stands for something else. The cautionary tale of a warrior who flew to high and disappeared just as fast. Back in the early 2000s, Alistair Overeem was just one of many European fighters hustling for a seat at the table. Back then, he was a lanky light heavyweight with good reach, killer knees, and a slick submission game. He had potential, no question, but he hadn't become the nightmare he'd one day be. That all changed when he bulked up to heavyweight. Round 2007, fans couldn't help but notice a transformation that felt unreal. Overeem didn't just gain muscle, he exploded. His neck thickened, arms blew up, and his traps shot toward his ears. He looked like something out of a Marvel movie. This wasn't the skinny Dutch striker people remembered. This was different. Frightening. Online, a new nickname surfaced: Ubereem. And what came next? One of the wildest heavyweight streaks in modern fight history. In K1 kickboxing, Overeem stunned the world by not just hanging with the best, he beat them at their own game. In 2010, he tore through the K1 Grand Prix, crushing Tyrone Spong, Gakhan Saki, and Peter Ertzal in one night. These weren't just wins, these were destructions. His punches, radioactive, his knees, bone-snapping. He didn't just win fights, he ended people. Meanwhile, in Strikeforce, Overeem grabbed the heavyweight title, steamrolling Brett Rogers and brushing off Fabricio Werdum. His style became a savage blend of Dutch striking and brute strength. He wasn't just a striker, he was an event, and in Japan's dream promotion, another title. He bagged the interim heavyweight belt, proving he wasn't tied down by promotions. He was an international demolition crew. Very few fighters have ever juggled top-tier MMA and elite kickboxing gold. At the same time, Overeem did both. By 2011, when he signed with the UFC, the hype was deafening. He wasn't just seen as a threat, he was marketed as the most terrifying heavyweight alive. His UFC debut, a monster versus monster showdown against Brock Lesnar. Fans foam at the mouth. To massive behemoths, one octagon, only one walks out. Overeem delivered. He dug a liver kick into Lesnar so hard, the ex-WWE icon crumbled in a heap. Brutal, fast, decisive. Overeem stood tall, arms outstretched. Who's next? But just as he hit his peak, the whispers got louder. That body, was it too big? Too quick of a transformation? Too clean to be clean? Then came the breaking point. In 2012, just before a long-awaited title fight against Junior Dos Santos, the Nevada State Athletic Commission hit Overeem with a surprise test. He failed hard. His testosterone to epitestosterone T/E ratio, a staggering 14-to-1. For context, the average guy sits at 1-to-1. He was 14 times above normal. The MMA world exploded. The fight with Dos Santos was yanked. Overeem was suspended for 9 months. The man who folded Lesnar, who conquered K1, who looked like a superhero, was now being labeled a cheat. Overeem tried damage control, claimed a doctor injected him with an anti-inflammatory that just happened to contain testosterone. Almost no one bought it. Fighters ridiculed him. Dana White seethed. Fans flipped. The name Ubereem, now it had a whole different energy, sinister, not special. The suspension didn't just stall his career, it tainted it. He went from feared Titan to suspect product. When he came back, fans noticed instantly. The body had changed. Gone was the hulking 160-pound frame. He looked smaller, leaner. The transformation wasn't subtle. And his performances, not the same. He still had elite technique, still slick with his striking. But that extra spark, that intimidation factor was gone. He became the face of a new era. The fall from pre-USADA chaos to drug-tested reality. His drop wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. From K1 monster to cautionary tale. From apex predator to someone trying to prove he could still fight clean. But what came after made the suspension look tame. Overeem's post-ban career was grim. Not because of the damage he gave, but the punishment he took. His return was supposed to be a comeback. It wasn't. It was the start of his undoing. In 2013, he faced Antonio Bigfoot Silva. Early on, it looked like vintage Overeem knees, combos, violence. But in round 3, everything flipped. Bigfoot unleashed a brutal sequence of punches that cracked Overeem's jaw and left him out cold against the cage. That image of his lifeless body slumped over. Viral. Then came Travis Brown. Overeem started strong again. Body shots, pressure, knees, then out of nowhere front kick to the face. Hammer fist, mems. But the worst, Francis Ngannou. 2017, Overeem had clawed his way back up the ranks. One win away from another title shot, Ngannou erased that dream. With one of the most savage uppercuts ever thrown, Overeem's head snapped back like a Pez dispenser. His body went rigid. He crashed like a statue collapsing in slow motion. The crowd gasped. Commentators froze. Ngannou became a superstar. Overeem became another GIF. It wasn't just defeat. It was devastation, and it kept happening. These weren't just L's. They were life-altering knockouts, the kind that shortened careers, the kind that changed lives. Fans stopped fearing Overeem. They pitied him. His chin was questioned. His longevity doubted. He wasn't a title threat, he was a stepping stone, a test, a highlight reel. And with every knockout, the question echoed louder. How much more punishment could he take? If there was ever a shot to rewrite it all, it came at UFC 103, September 10, 2016. Overeem finally got his chance to fight for the UFC Heavyweight Championship against Stipe Miocic, the hard-working brawler backed by the city of Cleveland. For a moment, it felt like fate was bending. Overeem dropped Stipe early and pounced with a guillotine. Then after the fight, in the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, he made a wild claim. Stipe had tapped. Rogan, stunned, asked for the replay. They watched it live. No tap. The crowd booed. Rogan cringed. Dana White lit him up publicly. Fans turned on him again. What should have been a redemptive loss became a punchline. That was his final shot at UFC gold, and it slipped away. The heavyweight division moved forward. New stars emerged. Overeem stuck around, but only as a relic, a symbol of what once was. Few fighters are as physically tied to their image as Alistair Overeem. At his peak, he looked carved from stone, but when drug testing got real and the veil dropped, everything changed. Over time, his frame withered. His muscles shrank, the traps vanished, the oversized arms deflated. The comic book build disappeared. In its place, a regular heavyweight, strong but human. The internet, as ruthless as ever, noticed, and Overeem, once a legend, became a warning, a story of strength, and of what happens when it fades. New memes started circulating, fans posting side-by-side images mocking his transformation. They weren't just doubting his power anymore. They were poking fun at who he'd become. It wasn't just about looks, his fighting style had shifted to less aggression, more hesitation. Overeem began leaning into a cautious, point-fighting strategy. He selected shots carefully, circled defensively, and held on for survival instead of going for dominance. Sure, he managed to rack up some decision wins this way, but it was obvious the predator was gone. The survivor was all that remained. To his credit, Overeem never made excuses. He didn't whine publicly or question the testing. But the world saw what was happening. The muscles faded, the knockouts stacked up, and the man who used to strike fear across entire divisions had become a moving target. There's a painful irony in it all. The image that made him famous also became the very thing that tarnished his reputation. Some fans still argue that his peak was more about enhancements than ability. And even though he tried to prove otherwise, the physical transformation was too drastic to ignore. Overeem, once the prototype of a heavyweight monster, now stood as a ghost from a controversial era. He was still in the fight game, but few believed in him anymore. Some fighters go out with fireworks, final bouts, main events, tearful goodbyes. In the cage, a wall of cheers as they hang up their gloves. Alistair Overeem didn't get that. For someone who'd once loomed so large in MMA, his UFC exit felt like a whisper, more ghosting than a goodbye. His final UFC bout came in February, 2021 against Alexander Volkov. It wasn't hyped as a classic, just a test to see if Overeem had anything left in the tank. What followed was tough to watch. Volkov dismantled him. Overeem looked slow, unsure, lost. The once feared striker spent more time covering up than striking back. The TKO came as a mercy. Commentary was quiet, and with that, Overeem's UFC run was over. But the most shocking part wasn't the defeat, it was the silence that followed. No retirement speech, no farewell post, no tribute from the UFC. He was pulled from the rankings. Quietly let go. No words from Dana White, no nod to a Hall of Fame, not even a send-off clip on social media. It felt harsh. Overeem had been a staple. He fought legends, delivered highlight reel finishes, headline shows, but when he was no longer useful, the UFC tossed him aside like yesterday's ticket stub. Fans barely reacted. Media barely covered it. A few diehards voiced frustration, but for most, just another aging fighter shown the door. And Overeem, he didn't complain. He just faded. Less interviews, fewer posts, slowly disappearing from the MMA world he helped build. One of the most accomplished heavyweights in the sport, forgotten by the sport itself. The silence around his departure said everything. Sometimes the fight game doesn't end with a bang, it ends with nobody noticing. After his UFC exit, most expected him to retire. His resume was legendary. Even if scarred, he didn't need to prove anything. But Alistair wasn't ready to vanish, not yet. In 2021, he signed with Glory Kickboxing, the pinnacle of kickboxing organizations. For longtime fans, it felt like he was closing the loop, returning to where it all began. The announcement sparked curiosity and cautious excitement. Could Overeem bring back a glimpse of his old magic? He wasn't the same, but in kickboxing, without takedowns, his experience might give him one last moment. In October 2022, he stepped into the ring against Badr Hari, an old rival, another K1 legend. Their history ran deep. This rematch was framed as a clash of aging titans. And the fight delivered. It was gritty, emotional. Overeem dropped Hari twice in the final round and walked away with a decision win. He collapsed in the ring, crying. Even skeptics were moved. Maybe, just maybe, he had ended his career on his own terms. But within weeks, the truth dropped. Overeem failed a post-fight drug test, banned substances. The win was erased, changed to a no contest. Glory released a cold, brief statement. No fanfare, no elaboration. Overeem was gone from their roster. No final fight, no explanation, just vanished. That comeback moment, the tears, the emotion, instantly soured. The respect he'd clawed back in that fight evaporated overnight. He had reached for the past, tried to be the monster one last time, and got caught. This was it. His final act. No new contracts followed, no new call-outs, no speeches. He disappeared from combat sports altogether. For a man who fought in Pride, Dream, K1, Strikeforce, and the UFC, arguably the most experienced heavyweight ever, this wasn't a farewell. It was a slow, silent collapse into obscurity. Overeem didn't exit like a legend. He exited like someone who stayed too long, chasing a version of himself that had already moved on. In 2023, a completely different Alistair Overeem began to surface, not in gyms, not in fight promos, but in quiet online interviews and niche Christian radio segments. He started talking about faith, about regret, about the hollow feeling that followed his career. Gone was the cocky striker, the boastful finisher. In his place stood a man reflecting deeply on where he went wrong. I was addicted to winning, he admitted in a podcast, but none of it brought peace. He spoke openly about his Christian faith, said it helped him make peace with his past, helped him forgive himself for the scandals, for the ego, for the lifestyle. He revealed battles with depression, anxiety, especially after leaving the UFC. I didn't know who I was anymore, he said. The training stopped. No more grueling camps, no more sparring. He now spends most of his time in the Netherlands with his kids, far from the noise. He's declined offers to coach, to attend UFC shows, to do commentary. He's walked away entirely. Some fans see his transformation as redemption, growth, the warrior finally laying down his sword. Others see something more somber, a lonely ending. Overeem gave his life to this sport, and when he stepped away, it didn't even say goodbye. He found God, but lost the audience. His Instagram used to be packed fight clips, gym selfies, fan shout dash-outs. Now, just the occasional post, a family photo, a Bible quote. He's not hiding, but he's not seeking the spotlight either. For a man who once fought in sold-out arenas, earned millions, and ruled the heavyweight class. This quiet retreat feels surreal. There's dignity in it, but there's sadness to dot today. Alistair Overeem is 44, and for the first time since his teens, there's no fight camp, no weigh-ins, no bright lights. The world he once ruled has moved on, and then he's left sitting in the silence. No Hall of Fame induction, no legacy video, no docuseries. For a man who fought 67 pro bouts across MMA and kickboxing, who beat champions, won belts, and terrorized continents, the lack of recognition feels brutal. He now lives modestly outside Amsterdam, financially comfortable from decades of fighting, but no lavish lifestyle, no fleet of cars, no celebrity status. "I've made money, I've lost money, I made it back," he once said, but none of it filled the void. He's divorced, still close with his children, but his life now is mostly solitary. The wear and tear shows, his face is marked, his speech is slower. That once superhuman frame now resembles a retired laborer more than a fighter. He's not completely broken, but far from whole. Years of knockouts, surgeries, abuse, they age him fast and emotionally. He seems to understand there's no movie ending here. He never held UFC gold, never fully rebounded from the cloud, never went out on a high note. He just faded, and maybe that's the hardest part. Overeem was once a global force, a multi-division champ, a physical marvel turned martial artist. He walked through fire for a taste of greatness, and he got it for a while, but in the end, the very machine he fed chewed him up and moved on. And no, he watches from the sidelines, left out of the award shows, absent from the highlight reels, and nah king without a crown, nah warrior without a war. Nan, in that silence there's more pain than any punch ever delivered.